Vanakkam Dohadevan, everyone. Good to be with you all again. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, we'll share the screen here. And we have our first topic. Continuing with the 5 gems of wisdom from the Tirukural. The next gem from the way of the householder is the next gem is the way of the householder. Okay, there we go. And we'll begin this topic with a question. If you know the answer already, don't share it. What is the purpose of earning wealth and establishing a home? According to the Tirukural, what do you think the answer would be? The common answer, of course, would be something along the lines of to provide shelter, food, and other necessities of life to our immediate family members, husband, wife, children, and any parents living with us. So that, of course, is a correct answer. It's the common answer, but it's not the answer the Tirukural gives. The answer the Kural gives is quite different. It says the purpose of earning income and establishing a home is to provide hospitality to guests. So for those of you who haven't seen that before, it's probably a surprise. But in other words, hospitality is really an important practice for the family person. That's what it's saying. This idea is found in chapter 9, entitled Hospitality. The complete verse, which is the first one in the chapter, reads, "The whole purpose of earning wealth and maintaining a home is to provide hospitality to guests." To emphasize the importance of giving, Tirukural devotes an entire chapter to this one topic, which is chapter 22, entitled Understanding One's Duty to Give. Second verse clearly states the poet's message. It is to meet the needs of the deserving that the worthy work so hard to acquire wealth. A number of verses give charming analogies of how the wealth a family has acquired can benefit all. 2:17. In the hands of a generous man, wealth is like a medicinal tree whose healing gifts help all. Some of the refinements of hospitality Tirukural mentions in the verses of this chapter are: be generous in feeding the guest, even when the meal is an elaborate and expensive one. Don't feel you have done enough when feeding a few guests. Hope that even more will come. And there's a beautiful verse that ends the chapter on hospitality, which reads, "The delicate anichum flower withers when merely smelled, but an unwelcome look is enough to wither a guest's heart." Let me try again. It's such a beautiful verse. The delicate anichum flower withers when merely smelled, but an unwelcome look is enough to wither a guest's heart. So we've got two withers there. That's nicely done. So just a look in the sensitive situation of being a guest in someone else's home, just an unfriendly look is enough for the guest to feel unwelcome, let alone an unfriendly word. There is an interesting verse in this chapter which reads, "Charity's merit cannot be measured by gifts given. It is measured by measuring the receiver's merits." Second verse on this idea. Help rendered another cannot be measured by the extent of assistance given. Its real measure is the recipient's worthiness. So that may be a new idea again to some of you. If you give $100, you would think it would automatically create more merit than giving only $50. However, the variable we are overlooking is the merit of the receiver. If we give to a man of great spiritual attainment versus a man of none, that adds a good deal of merit to the action beyond that from the amount being given. Gurudeva comments on this concept. Karma is an unfailing natural law, simply explained by this example. Give a beggar 10 rupees. You are not giving, you are investing in your future. Somehow 20 rupees will find its way back to you. He has given you the opportunity to give. When we give expecting to receive, the law will still work, but if we give 10 rupees, we get back 10 rupees. Unselfish giving doubles the return. Giving to a temple is different again. Every 10 rupees given brings back 100 rupees in return. God pays a better interest. Giving is an investment in the future. It is not parting with something. Well, that's an interesting phrase. You're investing in your own future. Giving is an investment in the future. In other words, of course, the amount we give matters, but to whom or to what purpose we give it is also a factor in determining the merit that the gift earns us in the future. Final chapter of the section. Family life talks about being famous, something everyone would like to achieve in life. It is chapter 24, and the Tamil title is Puhal, which translates as glory, fame, renown, or celebrity. Though in real life there are many ways that people become famous, in this chapter there is only one, through giving to the poor. This provides one last emphasis from Tirukural on how important being charitable is in the householder path. To stress the point, it's the final chapter in the householder section, glory, and only one way to achieve it, through one's works of charity. First verse in that chapter reads, "Give to the poor and become praiseworthy. Life offers no greater reward than this." Contemporary Hindu society is placing a great deal of emphasis on accumulating wealth. Therefore, it is important for parents and teachers of Hinduism to emphasize the need to share some of that wealth with the poor and with deserving charitable institutions. An example that Hindu youth can easily relate to is Mark Zuckerberg, co-founder of Facebook. A few years ago, he joined a group of billionaires, all of whom have pledged to give at least half their wealth to charity during or after their lifetime. As a start toward this, in 2012 and 13, he gave a total of almost $1.5 billion to charity. He's pretty young in that photo. Interesting that he and his wife have a second home on our island, Kauai, and some of their charitable efforts have been directed to our island. I think they gave $1 million to help with COVID-19 relief, which was mainly just providing food there for a number of months when no visitors were allowed to come to our island. So we had something like 30% unemployment because no visitors were allowed to enter. And so they're donating now right here on Kauai and then other all Hawaiian island projects as well. So I have to update that slide. Okay. So the fourth gem. We also possess a number of negative tendencies. The need to harness negative tendencies through self-control is our fourth gem of wisdom. Tirukural emphasizes the need for self-control by devoting a complete chapter to it in the householder section. It is chapter 13 and entitled Possession of Self-Control. Chorale 124 reads, "More imposing than a mountain is the greatness of a man who, steadfast in domestic life, has mastered self-control." The key phrase here, of course, is steadfast in domestic life. This is the idea of being in the midst of young children and still maintaining self-control. So you probably heard this story, so I won't read it verbatim, but that is a family visiting me in the Gurupidam. You can tell by the whiteness in my beard how long ago, the lack of whiteness in my beard, how long ago it was. It's probably 15 years ago. And it's a common problem. The kids start running around the room because they've had to sit still for the puja, which is about an hour and 40 minutes long, which is a long time for kids, say, that age, to sit still. So they come into the Gurupidam afterwards, and the kids have used up all their ability to sit still. And they run around the Pidam. And in this one instance, the man told me he was much more self-controlled before he was married and had children. And I said, well, that's the challenge, which of course is what the chorale is saying, is easy to be self-controlled when you're by yourself, but it's very hard when you have spouse and children. But that's the next step, is we have to learn to also be self-controlled in that situation. And we have the need to uphold virtuous conduct in chapter 14. Chorale 134. If a priest forgets the Vedas, he can relearn them. But if he falls from virtue, his high birth is forever lost. 136. The firm-minded never slacken in upholding virtuous conduct, for they know the miseries brought on by such neglect. Concept of ahimsa, nonviolence, in chapter 32, avoidance of injuring others. In the 10 verses of this chapter, Tirukural shares a number of approaches as to why we should avoid injuring others. The law of karma is one of them. Verse 319, if a man visits sorrow on another in the morning, sorrow will visit him unbidden in the afternoon. So that's a very reasonable approach to not harming others. It's going to come right back to you. Verse 320, same idea. All suffering recoils on the wrongdoer himself. Thus those desiring not to suffer refrain from causing others pain. So this is an interesting statement. In many chapters of the chorale, Tirukural uses 3 distinct approaches for convincing the reader to follow the advice he is giving. Each type of advice motivates a different kind of person. In the 2 verses we just read, as I already pointed out, Tirukural is taking the approach of showing a reasonable benefit or disadvantage for the action. In other words, in this case, a reasonable person will see that if he does this, he will end up harming himself, so therefore it is best not to do it. And the second approach to the Valavar presents an action as simply the actions that high-minded people do. In other words, it is simply the right course of action. No benefits are mentioned. So some people will be motivated just by knowing it's the right thing to do. They don't need benefits. Some chapters, Tirukural also uses a third approach as to why an action should not be done, which is that he creates an image of a very unpleasant consequence. I call this the scare tactic approach. It is appropriate for individuals who can be motivated in no other way. They won't do something because it's high-minded, and they won't do something because it's reasonable. They'll only do it if they fear the consequences. So he's speaking to all types of men, instinctive, intellectual, and high-minded. So we have some examples. 317, high-minded. The highest principle is this: never knowingly harm anyone at any time in any way. Beautiful. When we are harmed, there's a strong instinctive tendency to retaliate against those who hurt us. Valavar clearly states that this is not acceptable. 312. It is the principle of the pure in heart never to injure others, even when they themselves have been hatefully injured. A great deal of violence is based upon the concept of the strategic necessity of retaliation, an eye for an eye. If they kill one of us, we must kill one of them. Contrarily, Hindus view retaliation as unwise. Gandhi made an insightful statement to counterpoint the call for revenge. He warned, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. He also declared, I object to violence because it appears to do good. The good is only temporary. The evil it does is permanent. As we mentioned, a common justification for using violence is in retaliation for injuries to you, members of your family, your religion, or nation. There are many in the world today who believe that in those instances you have a duty to personally retaliate. However, Hinduism does not support the idea of such retaliation. Specifically, rather than retaliation, Hinduism favors using society's established channels for finding a remedy. It's taken as an example a common movie plot. Someone shoots and kills your brother during a robbery, and the rest of the film is devoted to you chasing down the robber and shooting him in revenge. What then happens in the next life, the sequel? There is definitely a negative karma to be faced for killing in revenge. Perhaps another robbery will take place and you will be killed. Better to let the police take care of the robber. The policeman has taken an oath to uphold the law and therefore creates no negative karma if in capturing the criminal he has no choice but to injure him. So that's very important. If an ordinary citizen does that, he creates a karma. If a policeman does it and it's within the way his job is described, they have certain codes of conduct. They can't just kill everyone or anyone. If it's within his code of conduct, which he took an oath to, then he doesn't create a karma. Very interesting. An example for students is if other students are misbehaving toward us at school, rather than misbehave toward them, we would tell of the matter to a teacher or a supervisor. As our two examples shows, the fact that we do not retaliate, however, does not mean we do nothing to assure that the offender faces the consequences of his or her actions. It simply means we dispassionately channel our efforts to a person authorized to give a proper discipline or punishment. But what about evil people? Isn't it acceptable to harm them? From the Hindu perspective, all people are intrinsically good, even those who act in misguided, adharmic ways. What we can guard against is taking on the peculiar Western perspective that some people are intrinsically evil, the enemy, and therefore it is all right to treat them in a different way than those who are intrinsically good. The Hindu perspective is that they are simply young souls and need to be disciplined by the justice system for their misdeeds, but certainly not harmed by us. Chorale 313 addresses this. Harming others, even enemies who harmed you unprovoked, surely brings incessant sorrow. Even when we control ourselves and do not retaliate, it is easy to still be upset with the offender and inwardly hold a grudge against him for what he did. Tirukural asks us to do even more than refrain from retaliation. He asks us to totally forgive him for what he did, and furthermore return his injury with a kindness. Of his three approaches, this is definitely the high-minded one of doing something because it is the right thing to do. Verse 314. If you return kindness for injuries received and forget both, those who harmed you will be punished by their own shame. So that's an interesting idea. They punish themselves because they realize their approach is not the high-minded one, and it should be. So they're punished by their own shame, self-punishment. Fifth gem from the Way of the Renunciate section. Chapter 27, which is entitled Austerity. Which in Tamil is Tavam, in Sanskrit is Tapas. The word translated as austerity is the Tamil word Tavam, the Sanskrit equivalent is Tapas. Okay. Jumped ahead there. Gurudeva gives this definition of tavam. Practice austerity, serious disciplines, penance, and sacrifice. So austerity, serious disciplines, penance, and sacrifice. Each one's a little different. Atone for misdeeds through penance, such as 108 prostrations for fasting. So penance is for a misdeed. 108 prostrations or fasting. Perform self-denial, giving up cherished possessions, money or time. That's good for just disciplining or increasing our control over the instinctive mind, which is very selfish. Gurudeva's definition may bring to mind images of yogis in the Himalayas, living in a cave or bathing in the winter in the freezing waters of the Ganges. And the Ganges is very cold in the winter. Though tapas does include these intense practices, it also includes easier ones that can be done by all. Simple form of tapas is sacrifice. Sacrifice is the act of giving up to a greater power, cherished possession, be it money, time, intelligence, or a physical object, to manifest a greater good. Sacrifice is similar to charity, but has the aspect of doing without some form of self-denial. So it's a more advanced practice than charity. Example is fasting for a day and giving the money saved to a Hindu institution. Second example is instead of going on a fairly expensive vacation, going instead on a budget one, making a donation of the difference to a Hindu institution. Then we have the performing penance to atone for misdeeds, 108 prostrations before the deity in the temple, walking prostrations around the temple or up a sacred path, and kavati. The various practices of tapas all have the same goal, purification. And the verse on that is really beautiful. 267. As the intense fire of the furnace refines gold to brilliance, so does the burning suffering of austerity purify the soul to resplendence. Very nice. So it's purification. So the soul is resplendent, and it's what's covering it. It makes it not look resplendent. So more of its resplendence comes out, so to speak, when the impurity that's covering it is removed. 263 gives a humorous chiding to the many who do not perform austerity. Is it because they must provide for renunciates that others forget to perform penance? Tirukural is pointing out that there's a tendency to acknowledge that austerity would be good to do, but unfortunately there is also a tendency to put off actually doing it. One way to overcome this problem of procrastination is to perform austerity at one of our annual festivals every year. For example, some Hindus perform austerities for the 6 days of Skanda Shashti, such as fasting during the day, attending the evening puja at the temple, and only then having a meal. And of course, we're all familiar with Taipusam, carrying kavadi, the milk pot, and other practices. And one of the points I make, because it has been a problem at Batu Caves, at least in the past, other forms, this should never be done for the purpose of impressing others, like the teenage boy does it to impress the girls. Rather, it should be done having in mind specific misdeeds you are atoning for, as well as promising to Lord Murugan not to repeat them again. Have in mind specific misdeeds you are atoning for, as well as promising to Lord Murugan not to repeat them again. That's the spirit of penance. We're doing it because of a specific misdeed or a series of misdeeds. And what it does is, Gurudev explains it, punishing ourselves, so to speak. And then the karma of it doesn't come because we already punished ourselves. For the retired, long pilgrimages to holy places in India are a wonderful form of austerity. It looks beautiful. Second topic, back to our Mauritian youth here. And as we've been doing a little broad statement about Mauritius first, every year in October, the Ganesha home at our spiritual park includes special blessings for students as they begin a new school year. Typically, thousands of students are present with their parents. Students receive a gift pack of notebooks and pencils. So it's a very popular event to get Ganesha's blessings for the new school year. And have your notebooks and pencils actually blessed. Our youth is Rakshita Kisun, 23, works as HR and administrative manager at Summerside Tots Nursery and Pre-Primary, and is pursuing her master's degree in Hindi language. She has just returned from India, where she went for higher studies in Hindi language to become a Hindi language teacher. See on her forehead there, Ram. She says people can easily tell she is a Hindu. I always wear a black bindi on my forehead, and I have my Raksha Sutra. She categorizes herself as one who believes in God and rituals and customs. Favorite festival, which is common in Mauritius, is Mahashivratri. She loves the pilgrimage from her home to Ganga Talao and back. My family has been hosting the pilgrims at our residence for the last many years. She notes the respect towards each other. People dress well, uniformly, and more precisely, and some do service like providing food, first aid, etc. The atmosphere itself during this festival is unique, and I truly feel blessed. Participating in 4 Pahar Puja all night while praying without sleep gives another Shakti in oneself. Nicely said. Second favorite is Deepavali. That's one that everyone has mentioned. During Deepavali, cleaning and painting the whole house is a common practice which every Hindu household follows. Cooking different types of sweets by watching YouTube videos is another plus. Although Gateao Banane, a Mauritian sweet dish made up of white flour and banana, is a compulsory dish, Nowadays, Mauritians are also exploring new dishes from the internet, sharing the sweets with neighbors and family, lighting lamps, making rangoli, spending time with family. New dress gifts are all the things that make this festival my second favorite. My daily prayer consists of lighting lamps twice a day at our Hanuman shrines. One thing I hate in our culture is that my family still believes in caste while choosing a partner. I feel no one can decide where they will take birth. One more thing I feel bad about is that more and more families are becoming nuclear families. So we tend to lose the precious rituals that only grandparents can cultivate. Grandparents have better knowledge than the internet. Grandparents have better knowledge that the internet cannot provide. So the internet has not replaced grandparents. That's good. And a reminder here, we have a new email, satsang@hindu.org, and you're welcome to email in questions, and then we'll answer them in a future Zoom satsang. Oh, thank you very much.